Well, welcome everybody. Glad you could join us this evening. We are, yes, as Professor Sylvie said, we are working out some Zoom kinks here, but we're going to get started. So if you're looking for the Eastman webinar about the Music Teaching and Learning Department, you are in the right place. And sorry to keep you waiting a little bit, but we're going to jump in here. My name is Matthew Artizone. I'm the Associate Dean of Admissions here at Eastman. And it's my pleasure to be here with you tonight with our faculty to be having this conversation. So I'm joined tonight by faculty from our Music Teaching and Learning Department. And this is the department at Eastman that delivers the music education curriculum to our students majoring in education and earning New York State certification and all that good stuff. And I know that some of you here with us tonight have been admitted to that major. And they also teach courses that are open to other majors that focus on the art of teaching, or pedagogy, as we like to call it, for a given instrument area. So I think we also have some performance majors out there, composition even, so that's great. So you folks will be able to learn a bit about the teaching resources, learning about teaching resources that are available to all of our students. So whether you're here to learn more about the education major, maybe about the possibility of double majoring with, say, performance and music education, or just to hear about how you can bolster your teaching skills as a performing artist, you're in the right place, and we'll cover all of those areas. We are in webinar format, as we're sort of figuring out how does that work. So if you have questions as we go, you can enter them into the Q&A, and we will be monitoring those as we go. The chat for this webinar has been disabled for participants, but that's what the Q&A is for. So please do feel free to use that. And if we don't get to your questions as we go, just don't worry, we will save a little bit of time at the end to play some catch up and get to them all there. But without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to the chair of the Department of Music Teaching and Learning, Philip Sylvie, who will get us started.
Thank you, Matthew. And I also want to welcome everyone and thank you for your interest in all the options that you might have that concern our department, the Department of Music Teaching and Learning. And we are happy to be part of the Eastman School, and we have students who are pursuing degrees and students who are interested in things that we have to teach. And so what I'm going to do is start by just walking you through some basics, and I'll share a slide that's going to introduce you to all the faculty who are here with us tonight, so you can direct questions specifically to people. I also want to welcome anybody who's watching this at a later time. We are recording, and this will be available for any of you who want to review it or point others to it. So we're calling this Preparing to Teach Music because the reality is, in music careers, we often have a teaching component to what we do, regardless of what kind of career we might pursue in music. And those participating tonight in this webinar are Dr. Azera, Dr. Caravan, Dr. Culp, and myself. And we have various specializations, but we also cross over into various kinds of various versions of what it means, I guess, to say to be music teachers. So I want to start just by talking a little bit about your identity. And you are, whether you know it or not, you're a musician, and that primarily shows up on your primary instrument, but you probably play secondary instruments. You may have studied piano or voice, or you sing. Even if you don't sing formally, I'm sure you sing. You've learned to read music, it's likely. You may have studied some music theory, developed some oral skills, which might have happened in a music theory class, or might have happened through other kinds of venues where, for example, you're in an a cappella group where you're working with your peers, or maybe you're in a band, you play in a contemporary band, or that kind of an instrument where you're developing some things where you're playing by ear, for example. And then, of course, in those as well, composing and improvising. All those things are part of who you are as a musician. The part that probably led you, especially if you're applied as a performance major, to this degree program is your sense of yourself as a performer. And that may be in your large school ensembles or regional and district and all state festivals, might be in smaller ensembles that occur at your school or informally. You might have recitals if you study privately. You might have had opportunities to do solos, maybe even in one of those large scale festivals. You might have done some recording that's become more common because of all of the circumstances around the pandemic. That's part of who you are as a performer. These are just some of my ideas of what goes in these categories, by the way. But lastly, you're also a music teacher, whether you know it or not. Every time you sit down to practice and there's nobody else watching, you're the person who's teaching yourself. If you're sitting next to another player or singer and they ask you a question about what key are we in, you're teaching your peer, and maybe you're even a section leader. If you've had the chance to be a teaching intern or a student conductor or even the drum major, for example, in the school, you've definitely been a music teacher, and you may even have taken on some private students at this point in your life. You'll see all of those things are intersecting. So these are parts of who you are, and all of them together make up some of what you are that's relevant to your future studying at a school like the Eastman School. There's certainly lots of other things too. So what I want to tell you is that we have a sense of where our students end up. We took a survey, and I want to just reiterate that out of the whole school, the students who are majoring in our programs are about 10% of that population. So, but the survey was for all students who graduated between 1990 and 2015. That's 25 years. And if you know anything about surveys, this one was, the results were strong because there was a strong return rate of around 30% or over, I believe. So in other words, this gives you a pretty good sample of what people do. So there were lots of findings in that survey. The most important for our discussion here is that you as an undergraduate, when you graduate, are likely to have these kinds of jobs, and in blue, and then or the first employment after Eastman is in gray, and then where the people were when they did the survey is in blue. So you can see these are some of the top ones that I included. Music performance is high, music teaching, private lessons, music teaching, elementary, secondary level, which could be all kinds of schools, public schools, parochial schools, and then collegiate music teaching. So you can see that there's an interesting range of where people ended up. And you should probably understand that these were, the same person could say yes to multiple things. And this is true of musicians. We end up doing lots of different things. So I just want to highlight that out of all the undergrads that responded or who have undergrad degrees, 43% of them were teaching private lessons. So they're doing it, they're teaching. And almost a fourth of them were teaching in some kind of a elementary or secondary setting. And again, we can think about all the kinds of schools. They don't have to be public schools. So it's likely that you're going to be teaching in some way, or it's a possibility for you. So our department wants to offer to you this idea that you could add a major, and we'll say more about that, or you could take courses to do two primary things among all the things you might do. And that is to develop skills, the kinds of skills we can teach you, and expand your options. And that's options for your future and for the kinds of work you might do as a career musician. So when we talk about skills, we're thinking about things like musicianship, which goes back to those ideas I was describing about how you might already be developing your musicianship, but that's you understand the music that you're creating, that you know how to think about music, you know the structures of music, and so that you perform in intelligent ways. Pedagogy, as Matthew Artizone mentioned, is how to teach. So knowing what's the best way to go about music teaching, and that's something that we specialize in and we can help you do better. And then I think an important aspect of what you learn in our classes and degree programs is how to be leaders. Because as you know from your own teachers, they're often up in front of a group, they're mobilizing people, they're organizing, they have to know how to structure time, they know how to get people doing things. And if you've been, for example, a drum major or something like that, you understand that you have to be a leader, a strong leader. We can help you develop that. If you decide that you are, and we're hoping you're here tonight because you're thinking about adding a degree, and if you are a person who's been accepted for the applied major and you're thinking about, could I add a second major in music education? Then we have a special program called the Forte program that's really important for you and your parents to think about, because it's an excellent offer, it's an excellent value. So in order to do this, well, let me just say this. If you, I'll back up for a second, actually. The Forte program is a way that you can do the 2 majors in 9 semesters, and including student teaching. And that means you're set up for New York teacher certification, which transfers to most states with whatever steps are required. But it allows you to do it. And then the key important thing about the Forte program is that your 9th semester tuition is waived. So that's where the value really comes in. So you normally would have your 8 semesters or your 4 years. And in this case, you're going to have an additional semester, but the tuition for that additional semester is waived. That's important because we see, and this is a statistic I want to share, out of 67 new music education master's degree students, graduate students, between the 8-year span at the top, a third of them were seeking certification. So they decided that they wanted to add this major because they were going to be able to be certified to teach, because again, it expanded their options. But for them, that meant a 2-year degree program after years of being out. And so you can compare that expense and the time invested with this Forte program, again, which is 4 years plus teaching experience, Forte, and the 9th semester tuition waived. So it looks like this. You just have 8 semesters, but then you add this additional semester when you're going to be doing your student teaching. And you're probably familiar with that. You may have even had student teachers. And again, your tuition would be waived for that. We also have a lot of courses that some of you may be interested in taking, and this is an option you might consider as well, especially if you decide maybe you don't see yourself as wanting to formally get a teaching degree and be set up to be certified. So we have about 50 students per year who are in our courses who aren't part of our degree majors. So the faculty got together and we came up with some courses that we would like to just let you think about as options for things you might take. So we have an Introduction to Music Teaching and Learning series. It's one in the fall and 2 in the spring. And that's a great way to explore. So if you're not sure, you could sign up for that class and find out more, learn more. We have instrument techniques and voice classes, which are ways for you to develop your musicianship on secondary instruments or on other ways of making music. We have a class that's called Music for Special Learners, where you learn about how to teach students with different needs. And that could be valuable, and it's open to anyone who's interested. A pedagogy class, and a good example is the Principles of String Playing and Teaching 1 and 2, and that's offered by Dr. Caravan. We have an urban practicum that's is going to have a relationship with a program called Rock Music, and I'm going to let Dr. Caravan talk about that in a second. I'll just add here at the end that there are other classes that you might consider taking, and you would just have to get permission from the instructor. So again, these are ways for you to develop teaching skills and develop musicianship through our coursework. So Dr. Caravan, maybe you want to say a few words about the urban experience.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Sylvie. Hello, everyone. I'm glad to be able to speak with you today. We're really quite fortunate here and to have a connection with a program called Rock Music Collaborative. This is a program that was actually established by our dean, Jamal Rossi, who I will say has a music education degree, and he's in a quite a high leadership position. And he kind of had a vision to provide instrumental music education for students in the city of Rochester. And this is a free program to any resident that child between kind of grades 1 through 12, where they can come and study about string instruments or brass instruments. They also have programs where they build musicianship skills. And they also have sort of like a general music class that deals with some of that. And we also, they're starting to build other instruments, or like guitar and bass guitar and piano and drum set. So they're really broadening the horizons of students in the city who might not have access to this kind of musical education that maybe other students might have. And so the important thing about this, it's free to the students that attend this program. And it's based on an El Sistema type program, which was made famous in Venezuela. And Dr. Armand Hall is the director of that particular organization. And he and I work very closely to provide teaching opportunities for students at Eastman. So right now with my string pedagogy class, the string playing and teaching 1 and 2, we have established a program called the Eastman Studio Preparation Program. And it's a class for mainly string performance majors. And they come and take the class and learn about principles of teaching, but they also get to work one-on-one with a rock music student in a private music lesson setting. So they'll observe the teachers at rock music, and then they will have this experience working with one student, and really they have the opportunity to connect with the student. One of my students from this past semester, she didn't really think she made a very good connection. And what happened when we said goodbye, we'll see you next semester, to the rock music student, she was like, will I get my teacher again? And she was very visibly upset because she had made such a strong relationship with her lesson teacher. And they are back together this semester working as well. So there are so many opportunities to volunteer with rock music, but also to have the experience of working with these children through our courses, like the string playing and teaching and the urban practicum, which is open to anybody actually. So this will also be a place where we support what Dr. Hall is doing with the students, and we learn how to teach through experience. And I think that's one of the major tenets of our department, if I can say so for everyone. We want to learn, and we want by doing. We want to talk about principles in class, but we also want to put it into practice. And so we highly value doing this throughout the degree program, but also for our other students in the school, as Dr. Sylvie said. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Caravan. So I've closed out the slideshow because that's the content I wanted to share. So just to recap, if you're thinking about our degree program, but you're not sure, you might want to sample a class, and Music Teaching and Learning 1, or MTL 110, is a great choice for that. But if you think, I've already been interested in teaching, and this Forte program sounds like it could be a good fit for me, it might allow me to reach that goal, then I want to encourage you to think about letting admissions know right away, because we can actually arrange to do some steps of the process and get you into our degree program even at this point in the spring before the fall starts. Otherwise, I'm going to encourage you to type in questions, any questions that you have, so that we can help answer them. And then I'm going to also allow Dr. Zara and Dr. Culp to chime in with their thoughts here.
I'd be happy to chime in with something. I teach the MTL 110 class. So if you're a major, you'll have me in your first semester. And that class is rich of content, full of content that establishes some context for your experience in our department, but also just generally allows you to experience what it's like to understand what we teach, when we teach it, why we teach it, how it can be taught, how students learn, all in the middle of making music together and having an interactive experience musically. Eastman is distinctive because it attracts excellent musicians, and the folks that are in 110, whether you're a major or not, all have some curiosity about teaching and learning. And it's a terrific way to get started in the program, a degree program, but it's also really a great opportunity for people who are just thinking about it, who want to spend a semester with those ideas and interacting with people in that area. So I encourage you to sign up for 110. I'd love to have you in class. And I'm very enthusiastic about working with everybody in the fall.
Yeah, thanks so much. I'm just so happy to be here too with my colleagues and welcoming all of you and those who are watching later on recording. I'm Dr. Culp. I work mostly in the area of elementary and general music, and so if you're not familiar with what that is, if you can think back to when you were in elementary school, grades about K5 or P5, those things that you were doing at that time, that's kind of what I help students do. And so often you might be thinking to yourself, where it's often that students don't come necessarily to secondary education or tertiary education here to work with younger learners, but we're so far removed from it, right? We haven't done that in such a long time. So to Dr. Caravan's point also, that's a big part of what I do in my classes as well. I get you out working with kids, and so you have an opportunity to work with the young ones and see what that's like. I can say myself, I originally didn't see myself working in elementary general music. I was planning to be secondary choral. That was really kind of where I was most interested, but it was really my experiences working with children and getting out there and seeing what they were capable of that really led me down this path. So I just wanted to echo the sentiments I'm hearing here today, which are about these hands-on experiences, having opportunities to grow and learn and test out new things, because you just don't ever really know where your path is going to lead until you try a few different things. And I wanted to echo Dr. Sylvie's statements about the leadership piece as well, because I was reflecting as he was saying that, and I was thinking to myself, I think all of our deans here at the Eastman School actually have education degrees. So all three of them, and then also Dr. Armand Hall, who Dr. Caravan was referring to, also has an ed degree. So there's just so much that can be gained from doing the ed degree on top of, enriching your own practices, what you can bring to others too.
Yeah, I would like to even speak even more to what Dr. Sylvie was saying about how you can really learn how to be your own teacher in the practice room. I recently did a presentation for Professor Johnston, cello professor here, and his studio about really cultivating mindfulness and cultivating you as an independent learner in the practice room. And what I said to them is, your teacher hears you once a week. And all the other times that you are in the practice room, you are actually being your own teacher. And so when we start thinking along those terms and we start really looking and analyzing and thinking about how we're approaching the instrument, and it really kind of focuses us in a different way to become more efficient in the practice room. And so with teaching the pedagogy class that I do, I've heard some students say to me, oh, I tried this in my own playing when I asked them to analyze repertoire or teach it. One thing that we really do in our department is teaching whole part whole. And Dr. Azera will take you through the whole thing in music, MTL 110. But my students were like, oh, I'm now doing that in my own repertoire. And I'm applying some of these principles that we talk about. And so it's really interesting to see how they're making connections between them as players and learners on their own repertoire to them teaching their student in rock music. So there's just so much crossover, like Dr. Sylvie talked at the beginning of the presentation, of becoming really what it means to just be a musician and a teacher. And I think it's a great way to come into learning about really refining you as a musician as well. So I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
I might just say 30 seconds, just zoom out a second to chime in on that, is that several years ago, we changed the name of our department to Music Teaching and Learning, because we're trying to help people understand that all of us are learners. And some of us are called to be helpful in a way of teaching. And you think about, you're coming to Eastman, you're coming to school, your teacher, the studio teacher you have is a teacher. You, Dr. Kevin, just talked about how you will work on your own skills. And in a sense, if you understand something about learning and teaching, that will help you individually. You also will help others. You may have a goal someday of teaching at lots of different levels. And so this idea of getting involved in that community and those interactions stems from this idea that the word educate actually comes from the root word of that, means to lead out. And that's really what we want to be thinking about. How do we lead out the best music in others and in ourselves as we interact in this musical world? So I just thought I'd make a statement about that in more general terms to inspire you to think about what it might mean to come and study some of those things.
Thanks, everyone. I have one other comment I wanted to share. I was thinking about adding the major, and my undergraduate major was in music composition, and I added the music education major. And that was because I realized that there was a lot of overlap with coursework, that I liked working with kids. I had worked at a summer program directing playground activities. So I knew there was something in me that was interested in teaching. And it was not difficult to add a second major. And I did, I got 2 degrees. And I think there's a composition person on here, if I'm right, from what you said, Matthew. And, I remember both my grandmother and a classmate saying, how you're going to be a composer? Like, how are you going to, I tried to figure out how that was going to become a livelihood. And the reality is I didn't earn any money as a composer for about 14 years after I graduated from being an undergraduate. So, there was a delay, but this is, I think, true in the profile of any career musician. If you can catch somebody or ask people, how did you do it? How did you end up where you are? Especially if they're doing something you think you'd like to do. And they'll probably tell you a story that takes you through all kinds of twists and turns as they discovered things about themselves and put together a profile that's multifaceted. That's really what musicians do. And so this is partly what we're hoping to get you thinking about, is that these are possibilities, and expanding those possibilities will give you more options when you're at any given moment after you finish a degree program. So
I would just like to add to all this wonderful conversation is sparking more thoughts in my brain as we're going too. And I loved what Dr. Caravan was saying about this idea of independent learner, but something else I thought that we should touch on that I hope was coming through is this idea of differentiation and individualization in terms of how we want you to think about meeting the needs of each learner in the space. And something that we do here is that we meet your needs. We meet the individual needs of our students in our department as well. And hopefully when you came or when you Zoomed in to audition or be a part of the Eastman community, you were feeling some of that. And I can say from the first moment I stepped onto Eastman's campus, I could feel that sense of community, that strong sense of support. And I can say that that is just really carried through in the music teaching and learning department. I thought Dr. Sylvie might share the picture of the convocation that we do in the fall of our department together. And so it's just this wonderful opportunity for us to come together and be with one another and support each other. Oh, there we are. And this is at our fall convocation that we do, that I think Dr. Sylvie and some of the other MTL folks had set up before I even arrived. So this is something that was here before I joined the faculty. So it's just so great to have, in this picture, we have undergrads, master's students, doctoral students, the faculty, our department admin, Celia Palmer down in the corner, who's just amazing. And so it's a wonderful time for us to come together. The other piece that we should, that I wanted to mention is that, again, you have support here. We are in your corner. We meet with you every semester to talk you through your program and make sure that you have what you need, and that my students, for example, know I say I'm just a Zoom away, and that was even before the pandemic started. They have a link that they can just click through and come and meet with me if they ever have a question or a concern, if they just want to talk. And I don't want to speak too much about what Dr. Sylvie does, but I've heard about the coffee club that goes on with Dr. Sylvie's advisees, that they come together and form a community around that as well. So I just thought that I would put that out there too, that if you were to add our major or just take our classes, we really, we wrap around our students and we support you, and that we would be here for you to answer questions and just provide that guidance should you need it.
So we don't know if you have questions because we're not seeing anything in the question box, but I guess, can they, Matthew, can they speak?
They can if they raise their hand, and then I think I have the power to allow them to speak.
If you'd like to ask a question or make a comment, you're welcome to raise your hand.
I do want to clarify that picture was taken prior, the year before.
Yes, thank you.
Past fall. Sorry, I would just like to clarify.
We have a Zoom version of that for this past year.
Yes.
Right. I made note of a couple of questions just while you were going. So maybe so far, in lieu of any questions from our audience, I think you've just got them spellbound, so they're speechless and impressed. But a couple of things that students have asked me in the past. One of them is, what if I'm interested in learning how to improvise, but not necessarily in the jazz idiom? Which department could help me?
We have a course for you. No, Dr. Azera?
Well, that's one of my big interests, but I think we're all interested in that kind of musicianship in the department. But improvisation is one of those things that folks are really curious about and may not have a lot of experience with. So one of the things we do in our department, we have a couple of courses, and I spearhead a lot of the leanings toward that. But the whole idea would be to how can we prioritize what you're already doing well and think about it in a way that allows you to begin to improvise, thinking of yourself as a musician that is in the moment and is able to create at an artistic level. And as a beginning of a mindset for improvisation, you already have accomplished some of this sort of idea as you've made music throughout your life. And what we can do is help you even think about how you can create your own melodies and your own accompaniments and things that provide a level of conversation to your music making that's sort of similar to how you speak language. So we definitely can help with that. And in 110, we take a journey that starts with listening and moves into improvisation. And we understand how that might inform your music reading and your music composition, and ultimately how you can understand theory in that context. But this idea of listening, improvising, reading, composing, and doing some analysis and how they inform each other, improvisation is integral to that. And so from the very start, it's something you can do, and it's approached in a way that's comfortable, and I think actually quite exciting for the students who take the class.
That's great, thank you. And then it's kind of related to that, but as you were talking, I was thinking about, what are some of the musical or musicianship skills that a student learns through taking your classes? How is it different from what they might learn elsewhere in the curriculum?
I'd be happy to field that to start because we start with those skills in the 110 class. For those of you who auditioned at Eastman for our department, you took some musicianship skills exam criteria that we sort of looked at to feel what's going on inside your body and mind. And the idea of being able to comprehend the music that you're interacting with through understanding it when you listen, being able to read spontaneously, but also have a real sense of rhythm, some movement for understanding how the meter of music works. We have a opportunity for you to hear harmony and chord functions, expressive phrasing, improvisation. All of those things are ingredients that we're going to help you with as you develop your musicianship throughout your experience at Eastman. And it's very much tied into what you'll be doing in your oral skills classes and in your studio lessons, because really the idea of developing your musicianship is what will be a foundation for all the things you do at Eastman School of Music. It's a foundation for your playing, for your teaching, for your interactions in general, chamber music, large ensemble, singing, movement, playing instruments, those kind of things. It's all comes back to your core musicianship. Does anybody else want to add to that?
Yeah, I could just add that when you get to upper level methods courses, which again are when you're in the degree program, you're, as has been said by Dr. Culp and Dr. Caravan, you're working in classrooms with learners, young learners, and that is a real test of your musicianship and applied musicianship in the sense of, I did a score analysis, or I'm teaching a piece, how do I take it apart and help a student build it how do I make it so that it's achievable for that learner? And if you've been a section leader in your school, for example, and you get frustrated because you don't know how to help your peers get it right, this is what we're talking about. There's usually an understanding of the tonal structure, the rhythmic, how the rhythms are built or fit together, and sort of how that, and it comes up time after time when I watch students in methods classes trying to teach something and realizing, oh, what's really required of the musician to be successful here. And it's all of those integral skills of understanding meter in relation to pulse and embodied meter, for example. And it's the, understanding your scale degree or where you are in the scale in relation to another part, or what part you're covering, and how those work together. That's applied musicianship, and we have to understand it and then help create ways for learners, beginners, to develop the understandings. So you really have to, you got to know what you're talking about. So I think it just gives them, maybe to answer your question, Matthew, the opportunity to apply all those things that are theoretical, literally music theory, where you're just talking and writing about it. Here's a case where you have to put it into practice, that understanding. And it's really pulling all those, when we teach, we pull all of those skills together that you develop in the earlier core classes here.
Yeah, those musicianship skills come back to harmonic awareness, and like Dr. Sylvie said, a rhythmic awareness, an expressive awareness. And as he was talking about the classes you might take in your junior year, we also remember that we provide opportunities for you to observe and have field experience in all the classes. It's embedded in all the classes. In fact, in the first semester, there are opportunities to interact with your peers and to work on some applied teaching skills. And at the same time, you'll be observing and interacting with folks in the field, the observations and field experience that you do with music teaching and learning that you can observe and participate in. So it starts from the very beginning.
And I would say too that when Dr. Sylvie said the score analysis, what you can't see is off screen, I have my 3 scores that I'm working on. I'm teaching elementary and middle school choral methods class right now. And I'm here presently with you all, but my mind is also in a rehearsal right now because I have students who are literally teaching right now with a partner choir that we have been working with all semester. So even though we've been remote, we've had these opportunities to work with a choir actually in Iowa. So my students have been zooming into those lessons and teaching them. And so tonight is a teaching night for them. And leading up to that experience, they each were assigned a piece by the director of that choir. and we did some score analysis, and what Dr. Sylvie was talking about, going through and looking at the parts and seeing how they all relate together, because it's a different level of analysis, thinking about how do they all relate together, and then how can I approach this piece in order to make 4th through 6th graders understand this piece and really grasp it. It's not just about teaching from measure 1 to measure 50, right? There are other ways that you can approach this, and part of it is looking for those relationships and using your musicianship to locate those relationships and what are going to be those great entry points for the students, including the solfegging and singing bass lines and singing tonal patterns from the piece. So these are different things that you can utilize. So just when you said score analysis, Dr. Sylvia, I said, oh yes, we just were doing that in my class.
There you go. Well, that's excellent. I think we've covered a lot of ground. And so again, I just want to thank all of the faculty panel for your time this evening. I want to thank all of you, the students, for hopping on yet another Zoom experience as we all navigate this craziness. And we just so look forward to the prospect of seeing you at Eastman in the fall. It's hard to even put into words. But in the meantime, keep in touch. I'll add that this webinar has been recorded, so if you missed part of it or you just want to watch it all over and over and over again, it'll be out there. We will share the link once the recording has been created. But keep in touch, keep practicing, and be well. Good night, everybody.
Thank you for being here. Good night.